What's up, everybody? Let me know in the chat if you can hear me. Let me know in the chat if you can hear me. All right. What's up, everybody? We're sipping on a classic this evening. A little Miller Lite action. Great. All right. Everyone can hear me. Let me know in the chat what you guys are drinking. I'm going to get this tweeted out so everyone can join us. Not getting drunk, just enjoying a nice 5 o'clock Miller Lite. Nothing wrong with that. Let's see. This shared out to everybody. Got it going from the living room tonight. As you can see, lots of decorations. We got a lamp back there. Give it a few minutes to let people trickle in. And then we'll get started. Everyone excited for the U.S. men's national team qualifying game tonight? Big time stuff. U.S. obviously did not qualify for the last World Cup, so the journey starts tonight. Exciting team. A lot of really good young players. I'm certainly excited. All right, let's start getting some questions in the chat. Get going here. We got a nice Miller Lite tonight for those asking. Just keeping it classic. Nice and light. Gross beer. I disagree. Miller Lite. Sometimes you just want a Miller Lite. Sometimes you just want a Bud Light. You know, nothing wrong with that. I drink all beer, like I've been saying. I don't turn down any kind of beer. I'm like, so on Hefeweizens. Wheat beer is not my favorite, but I'll drink it if the situation calls for it. All right. Romy's predicting a Pulisic hat trick. Unfortunately, Pulisic is not playing tonight because he had COVID, and they left him back home in the States for the trip to El Salvador. All right, let's get some questions in here. Let's talk some Chargers. I got about a half hour for you guys. I always say that, and then we end up going like an hour or whatever. So try and keep it to a half hour today. How many more times will I use the word lambaste? When it's called for. It's a good word, though, right? One of my favorites. Score prediction for U.S. versus El Salvador. I got U.S. 1, El Salvador 0. These CONCACAF games are always tight, physical. So I don't think they're going to go in there and score a bunch of goals, but I'm hoping for like 4-0. McCann says, get ready for the Tyron questions. I'm ready for the Tyron questions. Ask the Tyron questions. Let's talk about Tyron Johnson. You guys lost your collective mind after he was cut. If you've been reading The Athletic, speaking of which, if you don't subscribe, click the link below in the description. If you've been reading The Athletic, he was in my stock down after the second preseason game. You know, I had him in my 53-man because I thought they were going to keep 6 wide receivers. But I told you guys that he was trending in the wrong direction and that he was much closer to the bubble than a lot of you guys thought. But let's wait for the questions before we actually dive into it so I can actually address the parts of it that you guys are actually interested in. The truth is he was a bubble player, and he doesn't provide really any value on special teams. And if you're going to be a 5th, 6th wide receiver on an NFL roster, like, you got to have special teams value, whether it's as a returner, a gunner, kickoff, whatever. You have to be able to play on special teams and be a contributor there. And Tyron Johnson wasn't, plain and simple. What do I think of the overall construction of the practice squad? I think it makes sense. They got 2 wide receivers on there now with Bandy and Prohl. 2 guys that can give you some punt return flex, more slot guys. Three wide receivers now with Jason Moore, too, who's more of like your outside guy. They got Nate Gilliam, Ryan Hunter in terms of offensive lineman. They got Braden Fajoko as a defensive lineman. They got Cole Christensen as a linebacker. So I think that, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of guys that were, competing in camp. And some of those guys are going to be called upon here at some point. Ben DeLuca at safety, who I thought, really improved as camp went along. So, I mean, they've got their depth there. Favorite Mexican beer? Probably Dos Equis or Modelo. Actually, Modelo. I like Modelo. I'll go that way. Brendan said he's sipping on a Pacifico. A little boring tonight. Love Pacifico. Nothing wrong with that. Okay, so here's the question. Stacy asks, what's the inside scoop as to why they let Tyron Johnson go? He was one of my favorites. So let's just talk about it right now. If the Chargers had kept 6 wide receivers, Tyron Johnson would have made the team. But ultimately, they decided they had better players elsewhere, and they felt like they had enough with the 5 wide receivers they kept. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Josh Palmer, locks to make the roster. That was never in doubt, obviously. KJ Hill makes the team as a punt returner, strictly. That's it. That's why he's on the 53-man roster. They need somebody to field punts. He's the only guy on the roster that can field punts. That's a reliable punt returner, relatively speaking. Obviously, he had that muff last year against Oakland that ended up leading to a loss, but he was the guy that they felt most comfortable with at that position. So you have those 4 guys. You need a punt returner, and those 3 top receivers are making the squad. So then it's between Jalen Guyton and Tyron Johnson for that 5th spot. Similar skill sets. But Joe Lombardi said today that they went with Jalen Guyton because he provides more versatility. He's a bigger player, better blocker. I think he's a better route runner. And overall, I think he's just a better player than Tyron Johnson. So there you have it. There's your 5 wide receivers. And you guys are talking about Tyron Johnson like he's Tyreek Hill. He's not. He made some big plays last year, absolutely, and I give him credit for that as an undrafted player. But this was not some egregious move by the Chargers. It's not like they cut an all-pro player here. He does one thing really well, and that's run fast down the field. They have that in Jalen Guyton. So in what I was getting at earlier is that neither Jalen Guyton nor Tyron Johnson provide value on special teams. Neither of them. I feel like Guyton can be a punt returner in a pinch, but that's not something he's really done ever. Same with Tyron Johnson, not a guy you can really rely on as a punt returner, and they felt like they had better kick returners on the roster between Larry Roundtree, Justin Jackson, and Nasir Adderley. And so at the end of the day, you're deciding between 2 players that don't have special teams value. You can only keep one of those guys. You can't have 2 guys in your receivers room if you're keeping 5 wide receivers that don't provide any value on special teams. And so that's what it came down to. Ultimately, he was obviously picked by the Jaguars, who had the number 1 spot in the order, in the waiver order. So he's obviously a coveted player. You try and shop Tyron Johnson around, see if you can get a draft pick for him potentially. But those teams that are at the early stages of the waiver order aren't going to give up anything, because especially the Jaguars, because they know that they're going to have the rights to him if he's cut. So you try and shop him around, doesn't come through, and then you release him. I don't think they lost a lot in Tyron Johnson. And I know you guys are going to be surprised to hear that, but if you don't provide special teams value and you are fighting for one of those spots, 47 to 53, how many times have we talked about this? You have to be a good special teams player. You have to be providing some special teams value if you're between 47 and 53 on the roster, and Tyron Johnson wasn't providing that. So he's battling for a spot with Jalen Guyton as a guy with no special teams value who provides a deep threat, and they went with Guyton. I don't think that was the wrong decision. To me, Guyton's a better player. Next question from Jason. Do you think they limited Joshua Kelly in the preseason on purpose, or are we getting exactly what we saw? I don't think they limited Joshua Kelly on purpose in the preseason. He's going to be a factor offensively. I think right now it's obviously Austin Eckler, number 1. And those other 3 backs are going to be fighting for snaps. Justin Jackson, Joshua Kelly, and Larry Roundtree. And do not forget this. The Chargers coaching staff drafted Larry Roundtree. They did not draft the other two players. That means something. And Larry Roundtree showed a lot in preseason. He's the type of player, and coaches have talked about this. He's the type of player that may not pop in practices, but once he gets into a game atmosphere, because he's so physical and because he can break tackles and because he has that downhill mentality, his game pops a little bit more. And so I think you saw that in these preseason games. So those guys are all going to be fighting for snaps. They provide a slightly different skill set, the three of them. Could be a hot hand type situation when you're trying to spell Austin Eckler. I think initially, if Justin Jackson is healthy, he's going to be that primary number 2 back. He's really the best receiving back of the three of them. And obviously, the Chargers are going to be asking their running backs to do quite a bit of receiving and lining up in different places. But no, to answer the question, I don't think they limited him. I think right now he's probably the third back behind Justin Jackson. But they're all going to be in the mix. They're all going to get a shot, and whoever really proves himself early in the season is going to carve out a role there behind Austin Eckler. What's my record projection? 9-8. I got the under on the win total, which is 9.5. Pop, what do you think about K9's shoulder injury? In his vlog, the doc made it sound like he'd have a short career. Yeah, I watched that vlog. He heard it in a game, played through it, had surgery. Doesn't seem to be an issue at this point. Kenneth has talked to us and said that he's 100% and has really felt 100% since May. They obviously were slow with it, didn't really put him on the practice field during like OTAs or mini camp, but he's been full go during training camp, and he's going to be on the field a bunch, and I don't see it as a long-term issue. The Chargers O-line holds up well against the Washington football team. How does your season prediction change? My season prediction doesn't change. I have a really hard time believing that Brian Bulaga is going to be able to play 16 games. I have a hard time believing that he's going to be able to play 10 games. That's just where he's at in his career. It's unfortunate, but that's the reality. And right now, this is according to Joe Lombardi today, the Chargers are planning on keeping Matt Filer at left guard if Brian Bulaga goes down. And that would mean Storm Norton is going to be playing right tackle. I got question marks about that. So I don't think necessarily holding up in week 1 is the issue here. It's can Brian Bulaga stay on the field over the course of the entire season? Because without him, they're a much different offensive line. They don't have the tackle depth to really weather that injury. I think initially they go with Storm Norton. If Brian Bulaga goes down, right now Bulaga is practicing, so it's a non-issue. But I think ultimately down the road, they really have to consider kicking Filer out to right tackle and putting Brennan Hymas in at left guard, because I think that's their best 5 if Bulaga goes down. Now, Joe Lombardi has talked about, not wanting to make 2 moves and only wanting to make 1 move and trying to sort of sustain some level of continuity. I get that, but I think you want to get your best players in the field. And if Hymas at guard is better than Storm Norton at right tackle, then I think you really have to consider that move. But at least initially, it's going to be Storm Norton. So, I wouldn't you can't put too much stock into week 1. It's a long season, and you got to see, what happens after 5, 6, 7, 8 plus games with Brian Bulaga and his aging body. All right, let's keep going here. Popper, do you like a regular IPA or hazy IPA? I like both, but I've been kind of on a hazy kick recently. All right, seeing as the 2021 practice squad is 16 players, Chargers currently have 14 players on it. Is it 14? I'm pretty sure it's 15. Let's look. I had 15. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 14 players in the practice squad. Interesting. I thought they signed 12 the other day. and just signed 3, so my math is off somewhere. Um, but as far as Ryan Smith, where do you see Ryan Smith going when he's off the reserve COVID-19 list? So in order to activate a player off the COVID reserve list, you have to bring him onto the 53-man roster. So the initial move with Ryan Smith would be from reserve COVID to 53-man. That would require a cut to keep the roster at 53. Potentially, I think they could then put Ryan Smith on IR if he's still dealing with his core muscle injury, and that would clear a spot. Ryan Smith would then have to miss 3 weeks before he's eligible to return. So that's sort of what I see happening with Ryan Smith right now, but we'll see. He could keep improving. Right now, he's sort of in what they call an acclimation period. So when a guy is ready to come off COVID, they give a player 2 weeks or so to be on the practice field to sort of get his wind back, get his conditioning back, and that sort of thing. So he's in that period right now. So it's, I assume he's close to coming off of the COVID reserve list. But then you have to go to the 53-man, and then we'll see sort of where he's at with his core muscle injury, if they place him on IR and bring somebody up to replace him, or if they just keep him on the 53-man because he's ready to play. Okay, hold on. Maybe I'm missing the. There you go. Okay, so it is 15. It's 15. Just got confirmation. Austin Prohl is not on. I'm just looking through here. Austin Prohl is not on the website yet. So it is 15. So they have 1 spot left on the practice squad. My man Brock just texted us, letting us know. Must be tuned into the live stream. All right, let's keep going. Let's keep going. Just for people that are joining us now, I already talked about Tyron Johnson earlier, so I'm not going to repeat myself. If you want my take on the Tyron Johnson cut, watch the replay after we're done. Joe Reed is on the practice squad. Yep. Billy was our 4th best, but it seems like Staley is on board with fixing the special teams. Can't fault him for that. Yeah, I think that's fair. KJ Hill will be the starting punt returner for the whole season. It's his job right now. I think if he falters, Michael Bandy is a guy to watch as a punt returner. I know they liked what he did in the preseason. Yeah, I almost broke that one for a touchdown against the 49ers when he hurdled that dude. Ended up getting tripped up. But yeah, no, I wouldn't say KJ Hill has like a stranglehold over the punt returning job. Like, he's got to prove himself. If he's muffing punts or, not consistent back there, I think absolutely he could lose that job. And Michael Bandy's the guy I think that could replace him. Thoughts on the only one true nose guard? Yeah, I mean, with Eric Banks, the guy you're talking about, he said the guy they had is only 270. With Eric Banks, they feel like he can do the things inside that they need him to do in the scheme. They kept Forrest Merrill because they needed a backup nose guard. They wanted a run stuffer, but they feel like Eric Banks can do those jobs on the interior. And that's how Staley explained it yesterday. So they feel like they have 2, I don't want to say nose guards, but 2 interior linemen that can do the jobs necessary in the run game and the pass game to execute the scheme. Is Pearl still injured? Not clear. So he was not on the practice field today. At least I didn't see him on the practice field. So I didn't get a good look to see if he was in pads or not because he wasn't there. But they are back on practice Monday, so we'll figure it out. I imagine there's a couple guys on the practice squad that are injured right now. Joe Reed is still dealing with that ankle thing. Jason Moore has an injury, and those guys aren't practicing. So possible that Pearl is still injured, but I did not see him out there today. So I can't confirm that. But we'll see. On Monday, I'll make sure I keep an eye out for it to let you guys know. Is Bulaga actually going to play this year? I mean, the whole goal of this, I keep doing that. I mumble the question out. Brett Austin asks us, is Bulaga actually going to play this year, getting mixed signals between injury and rest? The goal this entire spring and summer was to just get him to the first game of the season healthy. And so that part of the plan was a lot of rest. And I think it's going to be a situation with Bulaga where he is not really practicing during the season. You know, he's played enough football where they don't think that he desperately needs the practice reps. What's more important is to get his body right. And so he's had some nicks and injuries. He's had a hand thing. He had a hip flexor thing. It looked like he tweaked something the other day in practice. I don't think any of that is significant. He was on the practice field today with his pads on. Looked like he was going to participate in team drills. He was participating in individual drills. We actually had to leave the practice now that it's the regular season before they go to team drills. Right now, it's rest. I don't think that he has any significant injury that's going to preclude him from playing in week one. I think he will be on the field unless something happens between now and then. The key is, can he avoid that type of injury as the season goes on? And can they depend on him at right tackle? And that's a big question mark right now. Jesus Lorenzo, unless it's Jesus, but Jesus Lorenzo says Stone IPA. Love Stone IPA. Do you trust KJ Hill as a returner? Doesn't seem like he's quick or hard to bring down. I think he's got really good hands. To me, the muff punt in the Oakland game was a little bit of an aberration for him. From everything I've seen, he is reliable in terms of catching the ball. And that is the biggest thing as a punt returner. Obviously, you'd love to have a punt returner with breakaway speed and touchdown capabilities and all of that kind of stuff. But the real key for a punt returner is catch the ball. Don't turn the ball over. And we'll see what happens with KJ Hill. I don't necessarily say I trust him. The Chargers obviously do, but I don't think his leash is that long. Someone says Tyron was a far better route runner than Guyton. Okay. If you believe at this point, if you believe that Tyron Johnson is like the second coming of Tyreek Hill and that the Chargers just made the worst football decision in the history of the league, I'm not going to change your mind. But I'm telling you what happened. I'm informing you about why the decision was made. I didn't think it was a bad decision. And if you're a Tyron stan, you can believe whatever you want. That's the last thing I'm saying about Tyron Johnson. All right. All right. Let's keep going here. Is Ogbongbemiga ready to play week one? That is the indication right now. He will be on the field week one. Do you think the move to keep three quarterbacks is future related? Stick QB2 next year, COVID insurance this year? I think it's all a factor. I think the plan with Stick all along has been to develop him into a serviceable backup. He obviously lost a lot of time last year, not having training camp, not having preseason games. I think that really hurt his development. But I think the idea behind keeping three quarterbacks is more related to COVID insurance and just making sure that you have an emergency plan in case something goes awry, in case there's an outbreak. All three quarterbacks are vaccinated, and per the league protocols, that means that if there is a close contact, they call it in the protocols, then none of those guys have to isolate. If you're unvaccinated and you're deemed a close contact and close to somebody that has been infected, then you do have to isolate. And that's why you're seeing guys like Cam Newton that have to sit away from the team for 5 days before they can come back. Obviously, you don't want that situation with your quarterback. So luckily, the Chargers have three quarterbacks who are all vaccinated. But I think you just want as much insurance as possible. You don't want a situation like Denver had last year where they're running like a undrafted wide receiver, former quarterback from college out there in a game that matters. So I understand the logic, and that's why I eventually pivoted and kept three quarterbacks in my 53 projection. Do a game by game predictions article. No, I don't think that's valuable because so much changes, as the season goes on. It's like I'm going to predict a week 14 game. I have no idea who's going to be injured. I have no idea what the situation is going to be. Just don't think there's a lot of value in that. What do you think of the Mina Kimes article? I thought it was great. She's a fantastic writer, really good reporter, and she always does a fantastic job on those features. So I thought it was really great. Wouldn't you say Alohi Gilman was one of the biggest surprises to make the final 53 if you had to guess before training camp? No, because he was one of 4 safeties in the roster. All 4 of those safeties were always going to make the roster. Derwin, Nas, Mark Webb, and Alohi Gilman. You can't go into a season with 3 safeties. So he was always a lock. I think the bigger surprise was the fact that he was actually working in with the ones in dime packages as the safety when Derwin James goes to dime backer. That was a surprise to me, and then also surprising how well he played. But he was always going to be on the roster. Is it wrong to believe that the Chargers should have kept Ryan Hunter over Trey Pipkins? Yeah. I think if you weren't going to keep Pipkins, you'd probably, use that on a 6th defensive lineman or keeping Tyron Johnson. Ryan Hunter's just a guy. Pop, could you see Mike Will being traded for an offensive tackle? No, they're not trading Mike Williams. I know getting good backups is hard, but getting someone better than Pipkins isn't. I think that's arguable. I mean, right now it's arguable. The way you get good backups is you draft well, and the Chargers have not drafted offensive linemen well. Like, this isn't like a now problem. This was a problem from 2017 to 2020 when they didn't draft any good offensive linemen and they didn't develop those players. That's why you lack depth. So I don't think you look at it right now and say, oh, you should have been able to get a better offensive lineman this year. Right now, it's about drafting well and developing those players, finding undrafted guys and developing those players. Now, they've done it everywhere else in the roster, but they haven't done it with the offensive line. That's why you're in this position. Why do they talk about prioritizing guard tackle flexibility and say they wouldn't kick Filer out? Those are 2 different things. They prioritize flexibility because it gives them options, right? Down the road. So right now they say, okay, Storm Norton's the guy. But let's say Storm Norton either gets injured or plays like crap. Now you have another option because Filer has that flexibility. It's all about giving yourself options. Not necessarily what's your first option, but how many different options do you have that will keep your offensive line playing at a high enough level to keep you in contention. Howard Guyton's hands, are they better than last year? They're better than last year, but he still struggles with drops. I don't think Guyton's that great of a player either. Like, I don't think Tyron Johnson and Jalen Guyton are 2 fantastic players. Like, there is a reason they went out and drafted Josh Palmer in the 3rd round. Like, there's a reason that they spent a premium pick on a wide receiver. For multiple reasons. One of them is they felt like they needed to get better at that position. They needed a better 3rd wide receiver option in this offense than Jalen Guyton or Tyron Johnson. That's why they drafted Josh Palmer. The alternative reason is that they wanted flexibility in case Mike Williams walks after this year. But for right now, for 2021, like, they drafted a receiver in the 3rd round. That should have indicated to you how good they felt about Jalen Guyton and Tyron Johnson. They felt like they needed a better 3rd wide receiver, so they spent a premium pick on it. This should not be a surprise. What did kicker come down to from Scott Green? Shout out Scott Green, regular in my mentions on Twitter. It was all leg strength, pretty much. Not just with field goals, but with kickoffs, hang time, directional kicking. I think they just leaned into the talent, right? They felt like Tristan Vizcaino had a more talented leg than Michael Badgley. They believe in their ability to develop Tristan Vizcaino, and he has a higher ceiling because of that talent, because of that leg strength. And they felt like that he would provide them with an advantage in field position on kickoffs, not just booming it out of the end zone, but also potentially, providing high hang time kicks, right? Get your coverage team down there, potentially pin teams inside the 20, that sort of thing. It just gives you options and potentially gives you an advantage. And, with Badgley, it was always, a question mark outside of 45 yards, and that's a tough way to live. You know, we don't know if Tristan Vizcaino is going to be better, but he certainly has the leg strength and the talent to be a really consistent kicker from outside of 45 yards relative to other kickers in the league. It's a question of can they hone that talent? And, Brandon Staley is always going to bet on himself and his coaching staff. If he sees a really talented player, he's going to believe that himself and his coaching staff are going to be able to get the most out of that player. And that includes his kickers because he believes in his special teams coaches, starting with Darius Swinton. Yeah, so this is a good comment here. He said, "You mentioned recently that Pippins will not see the field, and if he ever did, something is really wrong." I think I said that in my live Q&A yesterday. So yeah, this is what I'm trying to tell you guys. So right now, Storm Norton is a swing tackle. Bulaga goes down, Storm Norton's at right tackle. Storm Norton goes down, Matt Filer goes to right tackle, Brendan Hymas goes to left guard. Matt Filer goes down, now you're kind of in a tough spot, but maybe Trey Pipkins goes in there. Maybe they like Hymas to tackle better than they like Trey Pipkins. The point is, with the way Trey Pipkins played this year, they're going to go to a lot of other options before they put him on the field. All right, just hit the half-hour mark. So why don't you throw those questions in? If I didn't get to your I'm down at the bottom of the chat now, so throw your questions in there. If I didn't get to them, I'll try and answer a few more before I hop out of here. Why did Chargers media people use Badgley so much in like the YouTube videos and everything? Because he's a great guy. He's good in front of a microphone, well-spoken, knowledgeable, funny, charismatic. So I think it made sense to use him in a lot of that stuff. And he was the kicker, Which player on the practice squad currently will have the biggest impact on the roster this season? That's a really good question. I'm scrolling through right now just to think about it. All right, I got two for you. I think Forrest Merrill is going to have an impact this year. I think he's going to play in some games, and I loved what I saw out of him in the preseason games and in training camp. I mean, this guy is a run stuffer. He's a run stuffer, and he's really strong. Like, he can move people around and get some penetration in the run game, and that's a valuable skill set. The other guy I'll throw out here is Emeka Egbule. They only have 4 edge rushers on the roster. If they lose one of those guys to an injury, even for a week or whatever, they're probably going to have to make a move at edge rusher. And Emeka Egbule is the guy they're going to call up. Egbule also was getting a lot of run with the first team special teams units. So if they lose a guy on special teams, I think he could be a guy that's called up. So those are 2 names I'll throw out there. How do you see the running back snap share shaking out? Talked about this earlier. Eckler's the number 1 back, and the other 3 guys are all going to be jockeying for snaps. I think initially it'll be Justin Jackson getting the lion's share of those RB2 snaps, but Larry Roundtree is a guy that they love, and he showed a lot in training camp and in the preseason game. So I wouldn't be surprised if Larry Roundtree's in the mix. And I'm still high on Joshua Kelly. I know you guys are all out on him, but Joshua Kelly is a damn talented player. And I was really impressed with sort of the mindset that he came into camp with this year. I think the coaching staff still expects big things from him, and he can be a really good back in this league if he can just build up that confidence. He lost the confidence last year after those fumbles. If he can get that back, you're talking about a really dynamic running back, running and passing, and also a special teams contributor. So that's how I feel about the running back room. Any players you feel were kept in the 53 because of draft capital against Staley's wishes? No. I mean, you have to understand that the way Tom Telesco operates is he's working with the coach, whoever it is. In this case, it's Brandon Staley. And he wants to get Brandon Staley all of the players that he needs to be successful. He knows, and this is Tom Telesco, knows that is the only way to build a championship team. Is if you are in synergy with your head coach and you are providing that head coach with all the players he needs. And it's something that Tom Telesco has done in his career now as he hit on the players that he needs to hit. More like, speaking about the offensive line, no. But there's a lot of players that he's hit on that have been really perfect fits in what the Chargers are trying to do. So Brandon Staley came in here this offseason and said, listen, man, like, we got to fix this offensive line. This is a disaster. And Tom Telesco was aware of that. So what did he do? He went out and he found 4 new starters. And it's a credit to him for putting together a brand new starting line in one offseason. But I think this whole narrative that they're not on the same page right now, I don't think that's valid. The only guy that I could think of that would even come close to that territory is Trey Pipkins. But we talked to Staley the other day, and he acknowledged that, listen, Trey Pipkins hasn't been good enough, but we still see a player that can develop. And Joe Lombardi reiterated that today. So, I get the sense that, they really feel like Pipkins has the tools. And that has always been the case. He's always had the athleticism, the feet to be a great offensive lineman in this league. It's just about the consistency, And the issue with playing offensive line is, you can play 65 amazing snaps, lock down an opposing edge rusher for an entire game, and you let up one time, one play, one snap, and you get beat for a sack fumble that gets returned for a touchdown. All of a sudden, you're the GOAT and you've had a terrible game. But in reality, did you really have a terrible game? You played 65 out of 66 snaps perfectly. So that's the issue with Trey Pipkins. And I've watched it on tape. He has a lot of really good reps. And this is going back to when he played the past 2 seasons in regular season games. But it's just he has these lapses, and they're bad. And he lets up sacks. And you cannot be a serviceable tackle in this league if you're having those kinds of lapses regularly. So there's my Pipkins spiel. What is Herbert's ceiling? Yeah. I don't even know if there is a ceiling, honestly. Like, that guy is so good at football. Who takes over for Melvin Ingram? It's going to be Kyler Fackrell and Uchenna Nwosu splitting time over there. All right. Anything else? What do we get here? Captains. Oh, we got some breaking news and Hops with Pop. All right, here we got 2021 captains. You guys ready for this? Keenan Allen, Joey Bosa, Austin Eckler, Justin Herbert, Derwin James, Linval Joseph, Corey Linsley, Ty Long. Any thoughts on that? I think it makes a lot of sense across the board. I think it's impressive that Corey Linsley was named a captain in his first season. That's really hard to do. You don't see that very often. Derwin's a no-brainer. Joey's a no-brainer. Austin's a no-brainer. Justin's a no-brainer. But notable, right? But I've been telling you guys forever that, Justin really has the respect of his teammates. That's how he leads. He's just a genuine dude who goes out there and balls out and earns the trust of his teammates by being just a real human being. And I think they respect that. And as you can see through the captain announcement, they obviously do respect that. And then shout out to my guy, Ty Long. 2021 Chargers captain, Ty Long. How about that? Leader on special teams. Obviously the punter for the Chargers. So shout out to Ty. It's a really great accomplishment for him. All right. I think that's a good place to end it. Anyone else have any other questions? Sleeper tight end in fantasy, Jared Cook. Yeah, I wrote that. You got that from the Athletic article. All right. I think that's a good place to end it. So just some housekeeping stuff. If you don't subscribe to the Athletic, click the link below and sign up. Tomorrow, I am doing a AMA on the Chargers subreddit. So make sure you guys check that out. Come ask some questions and hang out. I've been a Redditor for over a decade. So it's always a pleasure to join those guys over on the Chargers subreddit on our Chargers to answer some questions for you guys. And then for these Hops with Pop, we're going to change up the schedule. This is the last Thursday show we're going to do this season. We're going to start doing them after games on Sunday. I don't know specifically what time they're going to be. It'll probably be kind of just sort of figure it out, play it by ear type thing, depending on what time the game is and that sort of stuff. But I'll probably just announce it during the week, what time we'll do the Hops with Pop. But we'll do like post-game Hops with Pop. So everyone watch the game. I'll finish writing, and then I'll get back home, and then we can do like a late night sesh on here where you guys can ask questions about the game. Then we'll talk about it. I'll give you my takes. I think that's the best way to do it during the season. How do we feel about that? Does everyone like that, doing the post-game Hops with Pop? Yeah? Bueller? Yep. Okay. All right, guys. So I think that's all the housekeeping stuff. I will just be plugged into my Twitter, and I will let you guys know about sort of what the timing will be like on these post-game Hops with Pop. But as always, thanks for joining, and I'll talk to you guys soon.